Hey folks, I wanted to bring your attention to a specific movie, Panic in the Year Zero. You just got to see the opening. Do you love that music or what? Anyway, the purpose of this is to get you to use this movie as a theoretic scenario-based training exercise. What I mean by that is this is similar to the card game Conflicted, or shout out to Jimmy Rants. He does a lot of these where he'll give you a scenario in one of his videos and look at different ways people respond for discussion purposes. It's very good for new preppers or a prepper group to see how each person would react in a different situation, and then to bring it up for discussion, and in some cases even develop team SOPs. Now, I must say, if you haven't seen this movie, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Go watch the movie and come back and check this out again, because it won't make much sense otherwise. The movie is available. It's a really old one. It's available on YouTube in its entirety, so you can just look it up and view it on YouTube. This movie is sort of an early post-apocalyptic type movie along the lines of The Last Babylon. Last Babylon was written in 1959, and this one was put out in 1962. The basic plot of the movie is there's a family of four, typical suburban family, the Baldwins, and they're just about to leave on a fishing vacation up in the mountains of California. They live in LA. So they're all piling in the car at 4 a.m. and taking off up to the mountains. Now, when they're well out of the city, they notice a mushroom cloud and realize that World War III has started. So the father switches on right away. The son, who is oddly played by Frankie Avalon, also switches on pretty quickly because he wants to, be like dad and impress dad. The mother and the sister, however, have a hard time adjusting to the way things are, and they never quite switch on. Now, this is a discussion point because you will encounter people in any kind of crisis situation that refuse to acknowledge what's going on. It's sort of a case of essentially trauma or shock in how the situation's changed around them. How many of us do you think would continue to try light switches or check our smartphones even months after the grid went down? After the father, Harry, realizes what's going on, he decides to pull into a small town to get supplies. This is a good discussion point for you and your group as to if you were away somewhere and had cash in your pocket and Walmart was in front of you or some other store, what exactly would you go in there and buy? Harry gets into a small town and he visits the grocer and he visits the hardware store. He has a big wad of cash in his pocket, but that's not unusual for the times because he was going away from home, out of town for a few weeks, couple of weeks, and that was a day and age before ATM machines, or where you wouldn't be able to write an out-of-town check without a delay on it or whatever, so that's not so unusual. The things that he orders in the store are quite practical. Some of them are a little amusing. Like, he actually orders 12 pounds of coffee. Man, I like coffee, but that's a lot of coffee. Flour, baking soda, half a dozen jars of honey. Let's see, what else do I have on this list? Plenty of candy bars, a big bag of dried beans, canned fruit, condensed milk, shortening, matches, a few boxes of candles, case of soap. Also in the boxes I could see there was some Wesson oil, canned tuna, crackers. There's no mention of toilet paper, and what was odd for the times is there was no mention of smokes or whiskey, and you can clearly see the booze on the shelf behind the grocer. But and Harry does in fact smoke throughout the whole thing. But you think he would have picked up a couple of cartons and a couple of bottles of scotch or something for the trip. So in the hardware store, he loads up on guns and tools, rope, pickaxe, whatever, all of these tools, and guns, because in those days you would go to the hardware store to get a gun. Well, this is where another dilemma comes in, and he did not have enough money to pay for his total purchase in the hardware store. So he gave about, I guess, about half in cash and wrote a check for the rest. And the guy said, "Well, sorry, Charlie, you can the cash will pay for most of the stuff. You can wait 2 days for the check to clear and get your guns." He also mentioned that it was the law that he had to wait to pick up the guns. So even back in those days, California had a waiting period, which is I found kind of curious. But here's another decision point. He needs those guns. So what does he do? He picks up the 45 off the counter that he's been looking at. He loads it up. He holds the guy at gunpoint. He says, "Sorry, you can keep the check. Here's an IOU. I'm not stealing these. I will pay you eventually, but I've got to have these guns to protect my family." He and the guy get in this little scuffle. His son runs in, holds the guy at gunpoint, and they exit. So to what extent would your group go? Would you steal from another regular Joe just trying to make a buck? This is something to discuss. Now, ask yourself this, though. This might be a small thing that Harry had to do, a misdemeanor compared to what he might have to do to protect his family. They're back on the road, driving down the road, and a car flies past them. They go a little further, and they catch up to the car, which is flipped over on the road with the guy hanging out of it. Looks like he's dead. Now, they stop to help. There was nothing they could do because the guy was dead. But this brings to mind, would you stop to help this car accident? Now, let me tell you, they don't have any first aid kit packed. I know that. First off, if there was a person and you were able to help, now what? Are you going to take that person with you? There's no more hospital. So are you just adopting this person? Are you going to heal them back to good health and keep them with you? Or are you not going to stop at all? Or are you going to stop and try to help them and then leave them on the side of the road with no car and injuries? Point for discussion. So Harry pulls into a gas station to fill up. He's still got a little cash in his pocket. And the gas says something like 45 cents a gallon on the pump. He fills up the truck, reaches for his wallet, and the guy says, "Hey, that'll be $30 or something." Harry says, "What? This is ridiculous." And he said, "Well, the price of gas went up to $3 a gallon, but I didn't have time to change the price. This is new rules, new world." Well, Harry slugs the guy, leaves the original money for the original price, and takes off. Okay. Now, he does the old one-punch knockout on this guy. It's a movie. But understand that you getting in a scuffle with somebody when you've got guns is kind of a mistake, because anything could have happened. This guy could have been the mixed martial arts champion of 1962 or something. You don't know. Your son has a gun. You have a gun. You go ahead and indicate that, no, you are paying the posted price, and you give them the money and leave. Just my thought. What do you think? Okay, they come up on a roadblock of these townspeople that want to keep refugees out of their town. Very realistic scenario. I want you to, I'll put a picture here of the roadblock. I want you to take a look at it, and if you were the townspeople, how could you have done it different if you had decided to do it that way? I mean, it's pretty obvious. They've got all their guys with shotguns standing out in front, not a real vehicle barrier. Okay, yeah, sure, I'm thinking VBIED, but the reality of it is anybody could crash through there. They're going to take casualties if anybody opens up on them, when they can merely block the road and sit up the hill in a trench overlooking it with fire. Now, one other thing about him running the roadblock is he tells his son, Okay, kid, shoot a couple of rounds over their head. I'm going to crash the barricade. But his wife and daughter, who are back in the trailer, he doesn't mention it to them. So they're sitting up looking out the window, presumably, while they're just crashing and running the barricade and having people shoot at them and such. So it might be a good idea to keep them informed. So they're driving along, and he stops to, I don't know what, but he stops by the side of the road for a few minutes, and these three hooligans turn up, the three 50s tough guy type of guys, and they try and rob Harry. Now they don't know that everybody is in the back of the trailer, the travel trailer, but they try and rob Harry. And in this situation, the son shoots the shotgun out the window of the trailer and wings one of them, and Harry and the son regain control of the situation. Now, what are you going to do with these three guys? What Harry chose to do was to tell them to get in their car and get going and stay clear, take off. Is that what you're going to do? Are you going to let bad guys who were just ready to murder you go mobile again? Or are you going to take their keys, let the air out of their tires, maybe even take their shoes and leave them on the side of the road? Just a thought. What do you think? What's your group going to do? Driving on down the road, he comes to a highway that is just totally swamped with traffic, high speed, very intense traffic, and he's got to cross it to get to the fishing camp up in the mountains where he's going. Well, what he opts for is he makes sort of gets a bucket of gasoline, he throws it across the road and lights it on fire. Okay, that's what he opted for. Are there any other options? Can you think of a different way that you'd do it? Also, look at the unintended consequences for this. One car, he just meant to stop traffic, and then one car bursts into flame. Oh, he had to save his family and all that, but is this the way you want to go about it? I don't know. Something for discussion. He gets to the place where they're going to go fishing. It's called Shibe's Meadow. It's sort of a campgrounds. And he makes a really smart move here as he pulls in the gate. He tears the sign down and throws it in the bushes. He closes the gate behind him and just sort of wires it shut. Pulls forward across a small bridge, and then, with his son's help, knocks the bridge down. So the bridge is sort of a one-car wooden bridge. Knocks the bridge down so no one can follow him in that way. His son tells him about a cave that he'd found up there, and lo and behold, Hollywood style, this cave is just the most perfect thing you've ever seen for living in. So they decide, okay, we're going to ditch the trailer downstream. We're going to hide the car in the bushes with the distributor cap removed. That was a good move. And we're going to move everything into the cave. Okay, good stuff. But look at the cave and look at the situation going forward. What could they have done a little different? Sure, I'd use the cave. They picked the cave due to fallout. I do it more for ballistic protection. You know that camper is not going to offer them much. But what they could have done to improve things is they could have established an overwatch up above the cave on the high ground where one of them's standing guard and watching the area. Additionally, what they could have done is cleared back the brush to clear their fields of fire and so they could see anyone approaching them. They might also consider doing the old Coke can with pebbles in it on a string type of alarm, rigging up an alarm around the perimeter, and perhaps some sort of log gate, or at least at night, across the opening of the cave, just so they'd have some sort of heads up if somebody was trying to get them. Now, Harry did another good move once they got settled, is he established 6 caches. Good move, something to talk about, something to chat about. The way he said it is he buried the food out with his family. The family knows where it is, and he told the family, hey, if you're ever taken or kidnapped, you can use one of the caches as to bargain for your freedom. So I'll skip by the next batch, but they run into Johnson from the hardware store again, and they run into the 3 hooligans again. This, I kind of said, well, I guess it's low budget, and they couldn't afford any other characters in the movie. Whatever. Long story short on them, they realize that the 3 hooligans are holed up in a farmhouse just close by. And they say, well, we're just going to try and avoid that. Okay. Well, the daughter winds up getting caught by two of the three thugs, the hooligans, and she's ravaged by them. And mom saves the day, runs up and pops off a couple of rounds, and the hooligans just drop her and run away. So the dad, Harry, and the son, they decide, hey, we got to go clean out this nest of rattlesnakes. They go on down there, kick in the door. Two of the three thugs are home. The one that's gone is apparently the leader. He's a little bit older. And they just flat out summarily execute these two guys. Bam, bam, they're dead. All right, is that the way you're going to handle it? I don't see that they had much of a choice, because either they're going to move or they're going to continue to be attacked by these guys who now know they're in the area. But does this warrant, in your mind, a summary execution of someone? Up for discussion. They find a girl in the farmhouse who's been ravaged and highly traumatized by the hooligans, and they say, come on with us. They bring her back to the cave. Now, the son is trying to make time with her, trying to get close to her in an innocent 1950s type of way, but you can tell she's traumatized and by her experience. Now, in any emergency like this, you are going to have to deal with this. You are going to deal with grief. You are going to be dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. You're going to be dealing with depression. You're going to be dealing with just an inability to adapt to the situation. Now, Prepper Nurse has put out some videos on this. I'm hoping she'll do some more in depth. Shout out to her. But this is cause for discussion. And do you have healthcare professionals in your group? How are you going to deal with someone who might just essentially be catatonic due to the stress that they've been under? Valid points for discussion. A little later, Harry hears on the radio that refugee camps are opening up all over the state. Orders gradually coming back, and there's a refugee camp 135 miles away from him. Well, the family sort of cheers, okay, yeah, it's over, hooray. And Harry essentially says, no, we're going to stay here because I have some measure of control here. I don't think this is much cause for discussion. To me, it's kind of clear cut. You can cross 135 miles of no man's land to be shoved into a refugee camp, or you can live the good life hunting and fishing up at the old cave. They are finally forced out of the cave because the third hooligan comes up. The son, Rick, winds up getting shot in the leg, and they all pile into the car and drive to the nearest town looking for a doctor. Would you bring everybody? Would you bring everything? Would you leave some back? How would you do it? I don't see that they had too much choice in this, especially knowing that they might not get back by car. Take everybody with them. They find the doctor. The doctor patches him up but says he needs a transfusion, so they head on to that refugee camp. The movie wraps up here with them encountering an army patrol. The day is saved. They all live happily ever after. Whatever. Really a good movie for its time. For such a cheesy title, it does bring some things to bear. Brings up some good points. This will help you if you use it with new preppers or if you use it with your group. It'll just open the door for further discussion. It'll help teach you each other's abilities and limitations and expectations. You might clearly think, well, when the three hooligans tried to rob me, I would have shot them all dead. End of story. And other members of your group might not feel that way at all. Well, it's better to address those things now and have some idea of how it goes. Anyway, just my thoughts. Hopefully this will come in handy to you. Stay safe.